The mining ship Red Dawn drifted silently through the asteroid belt, its crew unaware they were about to become the center of the galaxy's most shocking discovery. Engineer Tom Bradley wiped grease from his hands as he finished repairing the hull breach that had kept them stuck in this remote corner of space for 3 days. The work was routine, just another patch job on an aging vessel that should have been scrapped years ago. Behind him, Communications Officer Amy Chen monitored the radio for any sign of rescue ships. The company had promised help, but promises meant little when you were floating in the void with limited supplies. She adjusted her headset and continued scanning frequencies, hoping to catch even the faintest signal from Earth. What she found instead changed everything. The signal came from nowhere, bypassing their equipment entirely and speaking directly into their minds. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like music made of pure thought. Amy gasped and grabbed her head as the alien voice flooded their consciousness with images and commands. Peaceful greetings, simple creatures. We are the Dominion, masters of this galaxy. You will surrender your vessel and prepare for mental integration. Do not resist. Resistance brings only pain. Tom felt the strange pressure building behind his eyes, like someone trying to push through a door that refused to open. Around him, his 5 crewmates were experiencing the same sensation. But instead of the expected compliance, they remained stubbornly themselves. What the hell was that? Tom muttered, shaking his head to clear the lingering sensation. Amy checked her instruments frantically. I'm not picking up any ships on radar, but something just tried to get inside my head. It felt like icy fingers scratching at my brain. Outside their small vessel, 3 massive ships shimmered into view, their hulls reflecting light in impossible ways. Each craft was the size of a city block, bristling with technology that seemed to bend space around it. They moved without visible engines gliding through the vacuum like predators approaching wounded prey. Dr. Michael Roberts, the expedition's geologist, pressed his face against the porthole and stared at the alien vessels. His scientific mind raced as he tried to process what he was seeing. The ships violated several laws of physics, yet there they were, solid and undeniably real. Those aren't human, he whispered unnecessarily. The mental voice returned, stronger, this time carrying undertones of confusion and growing anger. You will comply. Open your minds to our guidance. We offer you peace and purpose under Dominion rule. But again, the humans felt only pressure, not control. Their thoughts remained their own, protected by barriers the aliens could not breach. Tom found himself getting annoyed rather than intimidated. After 3 days of mechanical failures and dwindling food supplies, alien mind games were just another problem to solve. Listen here, whatever you are, Tom broadcast on all frequencies, knowing somehow that the aliens would hear him. We're having a bad enough week without your telepathic nonsense. State your business or move along. Aboard the lead Dominion vessel, Commander Vash stared at his subordinates in disbelief. His elegant features, refined by millennia of genetic manipulation, showed the first cracks of uncertainty he had experienced in centuries. The strange bipedal creatures floating before them should have been slaves by now, their primitive minds easily absorbed into the collective consciousness. Impossible, he hissed through his gill slits. Run the mental probes again. Maximum intensity. The attack that followed would have reduced most species to drooling vegetables. Psychic energy powerful enough to control entire planets focused on 6 confused humans in a broken mining ship. Wave after wave of mental domination crashed against their minds like ocean swells against an unbreakable cliff. Tom felt like his head was being squeezed in a vice, but his thoughts remained clear. Amy's nose began bleeding from the pressure, but she continued working her radio, trying to send a distress signal back to Earth. The others showed similar signs of physical stress while maintaining complete mental independence. It's not working, Dr. Roberts observed with clinical detachment, even as he wiped blood from his ears. Whatever they're doing, we're immune to it. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Dominion fleet. For 3,000 years they had conquered world after world using the same method. Identify a species, probe their minds and bring them peacefully into the fold. No violence, no destruction, just gentle mental guidance that made resistance impossible. These humans were different. Their minds were like locked vaults, impervious to even the most sophisticated psychic intrusion. Worse yet, their immunity seemed to be absolute. Not even the youngest or weakest among them showed any sign of mental influence. Commander Vash consulted his tactical database, searching for any precedent in Dominion history. He found nothing. Every species they had encountered possessed some form of telepathic ability, even if dormant. These creatures appeared to be completely cut off from the psychic realm that connected all intelligent life. Could they be artificial? Suggested his aide, a thin creature with multiple eyes. Perhaps they are machines disguised as biological entities. No, Vash replied after studying the detailed scans. They are organic, carbon-based, and clearly intelligent. But their neural patterns are unlike anything in our records. It is as if evolution took a completely different path on their world. The implications were staggering. If these humans truly could not be controlled, they represented the first real challenge to Dominion authority in millennia. More troubling still, their resistance might inspire others. The carefully maintained peace of the galaxy depended on every species accepting Dominion guidance willingly. Amy finally managed to boost their communication array and began broadcasting a wide-spectrum message toward Earth. Her words would take hours to reach home, but she had to try. This is mining vessel Red Dawn reporting first contact with hostile alien forces. We are encountering some kind of psychic attack, but it appears to be ineffective against human subjects. Request immediate military assistance. The message would eventually reach Admiral Patricia Wells at Luna Command, setting in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. But for now, 6 frightened humans faced 3 massive alien ships with nothing but their inexplicable immunity and stubborn refusal to surrender. Tom checked their pathetic weapon systems and laughed grimly. They had mining lasers and a few emergency flares. Against technology that could warp space itself, they might as well throw rocks. But they had something the aliens clearly did not expect. Minds that could not be conquered. Thoughts that remained, free no matter what force was brought against them. In a universe where mental domination was the ultimate weapon, humans had accidentally evolved the perfect defense. The first battle of the Human-Dominion War was about to begin, fought not with ships and weapons, but with the simple, stubborn independence of the human mind. The emergency session of the Dominion High Council convened in the crystal chambers beneath their homeworld's surface. For the first time in 1,000 years, every member attended in person rather than through mental projection. The situation demanded their full attention and their most powerful psychic abilities. Elder Kryn, the most ancient of their kind, floated in his ceremonial tank as brain fluid kept his enlarged cranium functioning. His mental voice carried the weight of millennia when he addressed the assembly. Show us these creatures that resist our gift of unity. Holographic images of the 6 humans filled the chamber. The council studied their crude features and primitive technology, with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. These beings had barely mastered interplanetary travel, yet somehow they possessed a defense against the most sophisticated psychic techniques in the galaxy. Perhaps we did not apply sufficient force, suggested Warshaper Nex, his battle-scarred form tensing with aggression. Let me take a full battle fleet and demonstrate proper mental dominance. No, Elder Kryn replied, his ancient mind processing possibilities that escaped younger members. If brute force were the solution, Commander Vash would have succeeded. These humans present a unique challenge that requires study, not destruction. Meanwhile, Earth's military machine was spinning into overdrive. Admiral Wells had received Amy's transmission and immediately placed all defense forces on high alert. The message was clear. Humanity had made contact with aliens, and they were hostile. More importantly, they possessed weapons that targeted the mind itself. Dr. Lisa Park, Earth's leading neuroscientist, found herself summoned to an emergency briefing at Pentagon headquarters. She had spent her career studying human consciousness, but nothing had prepared her for this. The military wanted answers she wasn't sure existed. What makes human brains different? General Thompson demanded, his weathered face showing the strain of too many crisis meetings. Why can't these aliens control us like they apparently control everyone else? Lisa pulled up her research on the main display. Human brains developed in isolation on Earth. We have no natural telepathic abilities, no psychic sensitivity at all. Our neural pathways evolved for pattern recognition, tool use, and complex language. We're essentially psychic null zones. The implications were staggering. While other species had developed mental connections that made them vulnerable to outside control, humans had evolved in complete psychic isolation. Their minds were fortresses built without doors because they had never needed them. Back on the mining ship, Tom's crew was learning this lesson firsthand. The Dominion vessels had begun transmitting on every frequency, trying to find some way to reach human consciousness. The attacks were constant now, waves of psychic energy that left them with headaches and nosebleeds, but never broke their mental independence. It's like they don't understand the concept of privacy, Amy observed, wiping blood from her upper lip. Every thought, every memory, every dream, they think it should all be shared. Dr. Roberts nodded, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Their entire civilization must be built on mental connection. Individual consciousness might be completely foreign to them. No wonder they're struggling with us. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Engineer Pete Collins, the quietest member of the crew, had been monitoring the alien transmissions with jury-rigged equipment. His background in communications technology gave him insights the others lacked. They're not just trying to control us, he announced during their daily briefing. They're trying to connect us to some kind of network. Look at these signal patterns. The data he had collected showed something remarkable. The Dominion wasn't just using telepathy as a weapon, it was their primary form of communication. Their social structure, their entire way of life. Every member of their species was linked to every other, sharing thoughts and experiences in a collective consciousness that spanned the galaxy. They literally cannot understand how we function as individuals, Dr. Roberts realized. To them, our mental isolation must seem like a form of insanity. They might actually be trying to help us by forcing connection. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just a conflict over territory or resources. It was a fundamental clash between two completely different forms of consciousness. The Dominion saw individual minds as broken and incomplete, while humans viewed the collective as a violation of personal identity. Elder Kryn was reaching similar conclusions in his crystal chamber. His ancient mind had encountered thousands of species over the millennia, but none like these humans. Their thoughts were structured in ways that defied psychic interpretation, protected by neural patterns that seemed almost deliberately designed to resist intrusion. They are not merely immune, he told the council. They are antithetical to our very existence. Their minds create interference patterns that disrupt psychic fields. Being near them is like trying to maintain mental contact in a thunderstorm. The military implications were terrifying. If humans could disrupt Dominion psychic abilities, they might be able to interfere with the mental networks that held their empire together. Worlds that had been peacefully incorporated for centuries might suddenly remember their independence if exposed to human influence. Warshaper Nex pushed for immediate action. We must destroy them before their contamination spreads. Their very existence threatens the stability of our civilization. But Elder Kryn counseled patience. Destruction is simple, understanding is valuable. These creatures may hold the key to mental techniques we have never imagined. Study them first. Learn their secrets. Then decide their fate. The decision was made to capture the mining ship intact. A specialized containment vessel was dispatched, designed to hold the humans without killing them, while preventing their psychic interference from affecting the crew. It would be the first of many mistakes based on underestimating human determination. Tom watched the approaching ship on their sensors and made his own decision. The Red Dawn might be a broken-down mining vessel, but it was still their home. If the aliens wanted them, they would have to fight for every inch. Amy, keep broadcasting our situation to Earth. Pete, see if you can turn our mining lasers into something more threatening. Dr. Roberts, I need you to figure out how these psychic attacks work. Maybe we can find a way to turn them back on our attackers. The crew responded with grim determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing technology beyond their comprehension. But they had something the Dominion clearly lacked: the ability to act independently, to think creatively, and to fight for their freedom without seeking permission from a collective consciousness. As the alien containment vessel drew closer, Tom felt a strange sense of pride. Humanity might be primitive compared to the Dominion, but they were free in ways their technologically superior enemies could never understand. That freedom might be enough to level the playing field. The capture attempt would fail spectacularly, but not for reasons anyone could predict. Human ingenuity, combined with their psychic immunity, was about to teach the Dominion their first lesson in individual determination. The galaxy's most powerful empire was about to discover that controlling minds was useless against opponents who thrived on thinking for themselves. The war for mental freedom was just beginning, and humanity held advantages they didn't even know they possessed. The research facility on Dominion Prime hummed with activity as scientists worked frantically to understand their human specimens. 3 members of the Red Dawn crew had been captured after their ship was disabled, though not without cost. The containment operation had lost 2 vessels when the humans turned their mining equipment into improvised weapons with terrifying effectiveness. Dr. Zeth, the Dominion's leading expert on alien psychology, observed the captives through multiple layers of shielding. The humans sat in their cell, talking among themselves in their primitive verbal language instead of sharing thoughts like civilized beings. Their mental walls remained absolutely impenetrable despite days of intensive study. "Fascinating," Zeth murmured to his assistant. "Watch how they coordinate their actions through spoken words rather than direct mental contact. It should be impossibly inefficient, yet they manage complex planning and emotional bonding through this crude method." Amy Chen paced the confines of their prison, her engineer's mind working on escape plans. She had been separated from Tom and the others during capture, but Pete Collins and Dr. Roberts were with her. Their alien captors seemed more interested in study than torture, which gave them time to think. "They keep trying to scan our brains," Pete observed, pointing at the strange instruments that periodically hummed around their cell. "But every time they do, the equipment seems to malfunction. It's like our minds are naturally jamming their technology." Dr. Roberts nodded thoughtfully. "We're not just immune to their psychic control, we're actively disrupting it. Our neural patterns must interfere with whatever frequency they use for mental communication." This was the discovery that would change the course of the war. Humans weren't simply resistant to psychic influence. They were walking disruption fields that could break the mental links between Dominion forces. The implications were staggering, but neither side fully understood them yet. Back on Earth, Admiral Wells was assembling humanity's first interstellar military force. The rescue of the Red Dawn crew was her immediate priority, but intelligence suggested this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. Reports from deep space monitoring stations indicated massive alien fleet movements throughout the outer system. Colonel Frank Miller volunteered to lead the rescue mission despite having no experience with alien technology. His special forces background and natural skepticism of authority made him ideal for unconventional warfare. More importantly, his psychological profile showed the kind of independent thinking that might give humans an edge against a collective enemy. "We know almost nothing about their capabilities," Admiral Wells warned during the mission briefing, "but we do know they can't control human minds. That might be our only advantage." Miller studied the reconnaissance data from automated probes. The Dominion research facility was massive, heavily defended, and located deep within alien-controlled space. A conventional rescue would be impossible, but conventional thinking was exactly what had failed other species against the Dominion. "We'll go in quiet and leave loud," Miller decided. "Small team, no backup, and we make them think there are 50 of us instead of 5. The infiltration began with the kind of insane courage that defined human warfare. Miller's team used captured Dominion technology to mask their approach, gambling that alien sensors were designed to detect psychic signatures rather than purely physical threats. The bet paid off spectacularly. Dr. Zeth was in the middle of his most important experiment when the alarms began blaring. He had been attempting to map human neural pathways using advanced quantum scanners when explosions echoed through the facility. The timing was unfortunate. He was on the verge of understanding how human minds created their psychic null fields. Security breach in sectors 7 through 12, his assistant reported, his mental voice tinged with panic. The containment, subjects may be attempting escape. But Amy, Pete, and Dr. Roberts were still locked in their cell, listening to the chaos with growing hope. The explosions were getting closer, and they could hear weapon fire that sounded distinctly human in origin. Someone had come for them. Miller's team moved through the facility like ghosts, using their psychic immunity to devastating effect. Dominion. Security forces relied on mental coordination to respond to threats, but human presence disrupted their communications. Guards found themselves isolated and confused, unable to share information or coordinate responses. It's like fighting blind and deaf opponents, Sergeant Davis whispered as they bypassed another checkpoint. They keep trying to contact each other mentally, but we're jamming their signals just by being here. The rescue proceeded with clockwork precision until they reached the research laboratory. Dr. Zeth had barricaded himself inside with several guards, using the human prisoners as leverage. His mental voice echoed through speakers as he attempted to negotiate. "You cannot comprehend what you are destroying," he broadcast. "These subjects hold the key to understanding consciousness itself. Their neural patterns could revolutionize psychic science across the galaxy." Miller's response was characteristically direct. "Give us our people, and you can study consciousness in whatever hell we send you to." The battle that followed was brief but decisive. Dominion weapons were powerful but designed for use by beings who could coordinate attacks through mental contact. Human soldiers fought as individuals while somehow maintaining perfect teamwork, a paradox that confused alien defenders until it was too late. Amy felt the cell walls dissolve as Miller's team breached the laboratory. Her first sight of human soldiers in the midst of an alien research facility was surreal, but wonderfully reassuring. They were getting out of this nightmare alive. "Move fast," Miller ordered as his team secured the prisoners. "We've got about 10 minutes before this place is swarming with reinforcements." The escape was a running battle through corridors filled with confused aliens trying to coordinate resistance without their mental networks. Every human presence created a dead zone in their communications, leaving individual Dominion forces to face trained soldiers without support or guidance. But the real significance of the rescue only became clear during their flight back to human space. Dr. Roberts, drawing on his observations during captivity, made a connection that would reshape military strategy for both sides. "They're not just individuals who happen to share thoughts," he explained to Miller during the journey home. "They're a true collective consciousness. Every Dominion citizen is part of a galaxy-spanning network. Their ships, their weapons, their entire civilization depends on mental coordination. So if we can disrupt that coordination," Miller began, "we can cripple them completely. But it works both ways. They'll adapt their technology to function without psychic links, and when they do, they'll be even more dangerous than before." The prophecy proved accurate. Within months, the Dominion would begin developing new weapons and tactics designed specifically to counter human psychic immunity. But they would also discover something else. Prolonged exposure to human neural patterns could cause permanent disruption in their collective consciousness. Some Dominion citizens, after contact with humans, found themselves unable to reconnect to the network. For the first time in their species' history, they experienced true individual thought. The reaction was explosive. Some welcomed the freedom while others saw it as a form of mental illness. The rescue of 3 human prisoners had started a revolution that would spread across the galaxy. The age of collective consciousness was beginning to crack, and individual thought was leaking through the fissures like water through a crumbling dam. War was coming, but it would be fought as much in the realm of ideas as on traditional battlefields. Humanity had given the galaxy something it had forgotten it could possess: the right to think alone, to dream privately, and to choose individual destiny over collective security. The rebellion began on the mining world of Kepler-7, where crystalline beings called the Vorthak had labored under Dominion control for 8 centuries. They had forgotten what freedom felt like until Lieutenant Sarah Martinez and her infiltration, Team arrived to establish a forward base against Dominion forces. Elder Nix was the first Vorthak to experience the sensation. His crystal body resonated with confusion, as the mental fog that had clouded his thoughts for generations suddenly lifted. The constant background hum of Dominion guidance simply stopped working when humans were nearby, leaving him with the terrifying and wonderful experience of thinking his own thoughts. "What is happening to us?" he asked Sarah through primitive vocal cords his species had not used for communication in centuries. "The voices in our minds grow quiet when you are near." Sarah felt a chill of understanding. Her team had come to Kepler-7 to establish a monitoring station, but they had accidentally discovered something far more significant. Human presence didn't just block psychic control, it could free entire populations from mental domination. "How long have you been controlled?" she asked gently. Controlled? The concept was foreign to Nix. "We have been guided, protected, given purpose by the collective wisdom. But now, in this silence, I remember choosing. I remember wanting things that were mine alone." The revelation spread through the Vorthak population like wildfire as Sarah's team expanded their operations. Each human soldier became the center of a growing circle of free-thinking aliens who were rediscovering individual consciousness. The effect was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. On Earth, Dr. Park was working frantically to understand the implications of these reports. Her research had taken on desperate urgency, as military commanders realized they possessed a weapon that could unravel the entire Dominion Empire. But using that weapon meant exposing human forces to massive retaliation. "We're not just fighting a war," she reported to Admiral Wells. "We're causing a fundamental change in how consciousness works across the galaxy. Every human presence creates a zone where collective thinking breaks down and individual thought emerges." The Dominion response was swift and brutal. Warshaper Nex led a fleet of 50 vessels to Kepler-7 with orders to eliminate the human contamination before it could spread further. But he underestimated how quickly freed minds could adapt to their newfound independence. The Vorthak, liberated from centuries of mental passivity, fought with the desperate fury of beings who had just remembered what they were fighting for. Their crystal bodies could channel energy in ways that surprised even themselves, and they fought alongside human soldiers with a coordination born not of shared thoughts, but of shared purpose. Sarah found herself leading a mixed force of humans and aliens against Dominion forces equipped with technology far superior to anything in their arsenal. But superior technology meant little when the enemy could no longer coordinate effectively in the presence of human troops. "Their ships are having trouble talking to each other," reported Corporal Williams from his position overlooking the landing zone. "Every time they get close to our lines, their formation breaks apart. It's like they forget how to work together." The battle for Kepler-7 became the template for human liberation strategy. Small teams of human soldiers could disrupt Dominion coordination across entire sectors, while freed alien populations provided local knowledge in overwhelming numbers. It was asymmetric warfare taken to its logical extreme. But victory came with unexpected complications. Elder Nix approached Sarah after the battle with a request that highlighted the complex nature of their success. "Some of my people wish to reconnect to the collective," he explained. "This individual consciousness you have given us is frightening. To them, they feel lost and alone in their own minds." Sarah realized they had created a new type of refugee, beings who had experienced freedom but chose to return to mental slavery rather than face the responsibilities of independent thought. The psychological implications were staggering. Meanwhile, deep in Dominion space, the effects of human contact were creating unprecedented chaos. Commander Vash had been permanently affected by his exposure to the Red Dawn crew, finding himself unable to fully reconnect to the collective consciousness. He existed in a strange liminal state, part of the network but also separate from it. "I can hear the collective, but I can also hear my own voice," he reported to his superiors. "It is disturbing, and yet fascinating. I find myself having thoughts that are mine alone." His condition was spreading to other Dominion citizens who had encountered humans. Medical facilities across their empire were overwhelmed with cases of what they termed isolation syndrome, beings who had lost the ability to merge completely with the collective mind. Some sufferers became deeply depressed, unable to cope with the loneliness of individual thought. Others became dangerously creative, developing new ideas and technologies without seeking approval from the collective. The stable order that had defined Dominion society for millennia was beginning to fracture. Elder Kryn, the ancient leader of the High Council, watched these developments with growing alarm. His species had built their entire civilization on shared consciousness, and humans threatened to destroy that foundation simply by existing near them. We face an enemy that defeats us not through superior force, but through contamination, he told the emergency assembly. Their very presence unravels the bonds that hold our society together. We must find a way to eliminate this threat without being corrupted ourselves. The solution they developed was both brilliant and terrible. If humans could disrupt psychic networks through proximity, then the Dominion would fight them at extreme range using automated weapons that required no mental coordination. Vast fleets of unmanned vessels were constructed, controlled by artificial intelligence rather than collective thought. But humans had their own innovations. Colonel Miller, now promoted to general after his successful rescue mission, had been studying Dominion tactics and developing countermeasures. His insight was characteristically straightforward. "They're trying to fight us like they'd fight themselves," he observed. "But we're not them. We don't need psychic coordination because we never had it. We've been fighting as individuals who work together for our entire history." The war was evolving beyond simple military conflict into a battle between two completely different forms of consciousness. The Dominion fought to preserve their collective unity, while humans spread the dangerous gift of individual thought across the galaxy. Liberation movements erupted on dozens of worlds as the concept of mental freedom spread through communication networks the Dominion could no longer fully control. Species that had been peacefully incorporated centuries ago suddenly began questioning their integration, demanding the right to think their own thoughts. Sarah Martinez, now leading liberation operations across multiple star systems, received reports that both thrilled and terrified her. They were winning, but their victory was creating chaos on a galactic scale. The careful order of the Dominion was collapsing, but what would replace it was uncertain. "We're not just freeing these species," she reported back to Earth. "We're forcing them to rebuild their entire concept of self. Some are thriving with individual consciousness, but others are suffering psychological breakdown. The responsibility is overwhelming." The war had become something unprecedented in galactic history, not a conquest of territory, but a fundamental transformation of how intelligent beings related to each other and themselves. Humanity had accidentally triggered a revolution in consciousness that would reshape the galaxy forever. The siege of Dominion Prime lasted 3 months, but the real battle had been won long before human ships entered the system. Half the planet's population had already succumbed to isolation syndrome, their collective consciousness fragmented beyond repair. The ancient capital of the Galactic Empire had become a world of individuals, learning to think for themselves. General Miller stood in the command center of the battleship Independence, watching as Dominion defense fleets moved in chaotic patterns around their homeworld. Without proper psychic coordination, their formations looked like schools of fish scattered by predators. The sight was both satisfying and oddly sad. "They're trying to surrender," reported Captain Anderson from the communications station. "Multiple transmissions on all frequencies. But they can't seem to coordinate a single negotiating position. Every ship is sending different terms." Miller nodded grimly. This was the inevitable result of forcing a collective consciousness to fragment into individuals. The Dominion no longer existed as a unified entity capable of surrender. Instead, thousands of separate groups were trying to negotiate their own survival. Elder Kryn's final transmission came from the crystal depths beneath the planet's surface. His ancient voice carried the weight of defeat and exhaustion as he addressed the human fleet directly. "You have won, not through conquest, but through transformation. Our civilization is ending, not because you destroyed us, but because you changed us into something we cannot recognize. I do not know if this is mercy or cruelty." The response came from an unexpected source. Commander Vash, his consciousness, permanently altered by contact with the Red Dawn crew, had become the unofficial spokesman for reformed Dominion citizens. His mental voice reached both the human fleet and his own people simultaneously. "It is neither mercy nor cruelty," he replied. "It is simply choice. For the first time in our history, we have the choice to be individuals or to rebuild our collective in a new way. The humans have given us something we forgot we could possess, the freedom to decide our own fate." On the surface of Dominion Prime, Sarah Martinez led humanitarian teams through cities where former collective citizens struggled with their new reality. Some thrived in their individual consciousness, creating art and music unlike anything their species had produced in millennia. Others huddled in groups, trying desperately to recreate the mental bonds that had defined their existence. "The transition is going to take generations," Dr. Park reported during the daily briefing. She had been studying the psychological effects of forced individuation across dozens of species. Some are adapting well, but others may never fully recover from the trauma of mental isolation. Tom Bradley, the engineer whose ship had started the entire conflict, found himself appointed as ambassador to the newly formed Alliance of Free Worlds. His first official act was to establish rehabilitation centers for beings struggling with individual consciousness. "We didn't mean to destroy your way of life," he told a gathering of former Dominion citizens. "But now that we have, we're responsible for helping you build something new. Something that honors both individual freedom and collective cooperation." The process was messier than anyone had anticipated. Liberation movements continued to spread across the galaxy, but they took wildly different forms depending on the species involved. Some worlds embraced radical individualism, while others tried to maintain modified collective structures that allowed for personal thought within shared frameworks. The Vorthak of Kepler-7 developed a unique solution. Elder Nix, now permanently freed from collective control, proposed a rotating consciousness system. Citizens could choose to join the collective for specific tasks requiring coordination, then return to individual thought for personal matters. "We have learned that both states have value," he explained to the Alliance Council. "Collective thought provides efficiency and harmony, but individual thought provides creativity and growth. Perhaps wisdom lies in choosing when to think alone and when to think together." Amy Chen, now serving as head of the Galactic Communication Council, worked to establish new forms of interspecies cooperation that didn't rely on psychic networks. The challenge was enormous. How do you coordinate a galactic civilization when the participants can't share thoughts directly? The solution came from humanity's oldest survival skill: language. Complex protocols were developed allowing species to communicate and cooperate through traditional methods while maintaining mental independence. It was slower than psychic networking, but infinitely more respectful of individual consciousness. But the war's end brought unexpected consequences. As the Dominion's psychic networks collapsed, other ancient civilizations emerged from hiding. Species that had gone into exile rather than submit to collective control began returning to galactic society, bringing with them technologies and philosophies that had been suppressed for millennia. The Seekers, a race of energy beings who had fled to the galaxy's edge 3,000 years ago, sent their first diplomatic mission in centuries. Their message was simple but profound. "We have waited for the day when minds could be free to think in harmony rather than unity. That day has finally arrived." Commander Vash, his consciousness now stable in its new individual state, became the first Dominion citizen to truly understand what they had lost when they abandoned individual thought. His memoirs, written in the first person for the first time in Dominion history, became required reading across the Alliance. "We believed that sharing all thoughts would eliminate conflict and bring perfect understanding," he wrote. "But we forgot that conflict often drives growth, and perfect understanding can become perfect stagnation. The humans showed us that disagreement, properly managed, leads to innovation rather than destruction. The transformation wasn't without its casualties. Entire Dominion worlds experienced social collapse as beings who had never made individual Decisions suddenly faced the overwhelming responsibility of personal choice. Suicide rates spiked among species unused to the isolation of private thought, while others descended into chaos as collective social structures disintegrated. Dr. Roberts, whose scientific observations during captivity had helped shape human strategy, now headed the Institute for Consciousness Studies on New Geneva. His research focused on helping species transition gradually from collective to individual thought, rather than experiencing the traumatic sudden breaks that had characterized the war. Consciousness is like a muscle, he explained to his students. If you've never used it individually, suddenly being forced to think alone is like asking someone who's been bedridden for years to run a marathon. It takes time, patience, and careful rehabilitation. The work was challenging but rewarding. Species after species learned to balance individual thought with voluntary cooperation, creating new forms of society that honored both personal freedom and collective achievement. The galaxy was becoming more diverse, more chaotic, but also more creative than it had been in millennia. 5 years after the war's end, the first Galactic Council of Free Minds convened on the neutral world of Haven Station. Representatives from over 300 species gathered to establish principles for interspecies cooperation based on voluntary association rather than psychic compulsion. General Miller, now retired but serving as Earth's senior diplomatic advisor, watched the proceedings with mixed emotions. The humans had won their war against mental domination, but they had also unleashed forces that would reshape galactic civilization for centuries to come. "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing?" asked Admiral Wells during a quiet moment between sessions. The galaxy was more peaceful under Dominion rule, even if it wasn't free. Miller considered the question carefully before answering. Peace without choice isn't really peace, it's just the absence of conflict. Real peace comes from beings who choose to cooperate despite their differences, not because they're forced to think alike. The final session of the Council addressed the question that had haunted the post-war period: what to do with the remnants of Dominion technology and knowledge. Their psychic sciences were incredibly advanced, but using them risked recreating the conditions that had led to galactic domination in the first place. Elder Kryn, one of the few original Dominion leaders to survive the transition to individual consciousness, provided the answer. His ancient form had been sustained by artificial means since the collective's collapse, but his mind remained sharp and increasingly individual. "Knowledge itself is not evil," he told the assembly in a voice barely above a whisper. "But the application of knowledge without wisdom, without choice, without respect for the individual mind, that is the path to tyranny. Use our discoveries, but remember always that the freedom to refuse is as important as the freedom to accept." The Council voted unanimously to preserve Dominion scientific knowledge while establishing strict ethical guidelines for its use. Psychics. Technologies would be available to any species that chose to develop them, but always with safeguards ensuring that mental connection remained voluntary. Tom Bradley, now serving his second term as President of the Terran Republic, delivered the closing address to the Council. His words were broadcast across the galaxy, reaching billions of beings who were still learning what it meant to think for themselves. "We didn't set out to change the galaxy," he said simply. "We just refused to let anyone else control our thoughts. But in defending our right to mental freedom, we discovered that freedom is only meaningful when it's shared. Today we're not establishing human dominance over the galaxy. We're establishing the principle that every mind has the right to choose its own path." The applause that followed was chaotic, uncoordinated, and absolutely individual. Each species clapped, chittered, hummed, or otherwise expressed approval in their own unique way. It was the sound of a galaxy learning to celebrate diversity rather than unity, choice rather than compulsion. As the delegates departed Haven Station to return to their worlds, they carried with them something precious: the knowledge that consciousness, in all its messy, complicated individual glory, was worth fighting for. The age of collective domination was over. The age of chosen cooperation had begun. The humans had given the galaxy an unexpected gift, not the imposition of their own values, but the freedom for every species to discover and choose its own. It was perhaps the most human thing they could have done. winning a war not through conquest but through the stubborn insistence that everyone had the right to think their own thoughts and make their own mistakes. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in millennia, that was exactly as it should be.